We're missing somebody. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We have two more folks who have said they're coming, and we hope they do, but in the meantime, I want to respect your time. So we're sent the June minutes. Were there any additions or corrections to the June minutes? If not, we will say that the June minutes are approved and accepted. Today, we're going to start with a presentation from Erin Gill. And you know Erin, she's the Vice President of Sustainability and Government Relations, and she's going to be talking about two programs, KUB's renewable energy programs and also the community solar program. And these are topics which members of the committee or the board have mentioned in the past that have to move ahead. So after that, then we're going to go into some small groups, and we'll talk more about that after Erin's presentation. But we're going to get into these topics in greater detail in the small groups. So Erin, are you ready?
I am.
And I should have said it's great to see you all again. We haven't seen you since August. I apologize. Or since June.
All right. Well, good to see everyone. Let me kind of first recognize some of our utility colleagues out in Northeast Tennessee, Western North Carolina, who are really living through probably some of their worst days. And that's true for the people who provide the infrastructure as well as those folks who rely on the infrastructure that we saw really devastated. So, you know, being in the utility space now for just about a year, it's really humbling, I think, to have that moment where you see what happens when the infrastructure systems that our teams at KUB provide every day when things like that fail in other communities. And the one that's been kind of sticking in my brain is the water treatment plant up in Greene County. And for those of you who have been out to our water treatment plant on the river, you know, again, you think about the difference between the ability to have clean drinking water coming out of the tap and not knowing where you're going to get water from. And that's a very scary proposition. So really grateful. It makes me proud to work at KUB, and especially, I think, appreciative of the hard work that our teams put in every day. We do have mutual aid participation agreements as part of our standard operating procedure. Our crews have been on standby to essentially say, when asked, we will go. Some of our contractor crews have already made their way out there, but we will be continuing to engage in that network. And when the call comes, know that we participate and are very proud to do so. We've, in the meantime, sent some resources, water especially, out to help with some of our neighbors. So just keeping that in our minds today. I also want to recognize Chastity Hobby, who could give this presentation and has filled in many of the blanks for me as I've come on board, but she has worked on these renewable programs since their inception and is going to be helping facilitate one of the breakout sessions later today. So thank you, Chastity. So without much further ado, we wanted to start by centering our discussion for today in the context of, let me stand over here so I'm not blocking the screen and also not blocking Dawn here, centering that in our commitment to renewable energy, and specifically KUB's environmental, social, and governance goal of bringing online 400 megawatts of renewable energy by 2030. And when we use this term in that goal, new to the valley, what that means is that these are above and beyond those resources that TVA might have already been relying on, such as hydro, or that they are doing for kind of their generic broad grid purposes. These are really things that are designated and made possible because of KUB's involvement. We're going to talk today about the three current pillars of how we reach that goal: green invest, generation flexibility, and community solar. And we'll have breakout sessions focused on the last two of these, flexibility and community solar. But let me start by talking a little bit about Green Invest, which is a very important program because it is the big horsepower in getting us toward that 400 megawatt goal. Green Invest is an agreement that we signed in 2021 with TVA, and that was an agreement that really was negotiated concurrently with the long-term partnership agreement with TVA. This was a new type of partnership that TVA offered to its customers, and that's inclusive of local power companies, but also other customers as well. And it's a very cost-effective option to bring renewable energy onto the grid for a designated customer. KUB was the first local power company to participate in that program, and we are really grateful to have had the opportunity to do that early because the pricing is more competitive for us back in that 2021 contract than it would be if we tried to participate today. We have 325 megawatts contracted for KUB customers across 3 sites. These are located in Mississippi and also West Tennessee, and they'll be coming online over the next about year and a half. So the first one, Golden Triangle, will actually be online, fingers crossed, in January. It's built, it's waiting on a transformer, but we're really looking forward to getting that green energy flowing into our system. Once completed, when you aggregate those projects in 2027, when they're all online, about 14% of the energy that KUB is providing its customers will be attributable to that 14% of Green Invest commitment. So a big boost toward greening the local capacity while also making sure that we're doing so in a very cost-effective way for our customers. Let me pause there and see if there are questions on Green Invest before we move on to flexibility. Terry?
Well, it seems like my memory is right. You guys originally, before the COVID and pricing and all that kind of stuff came into effect, were looking at over 500 megawatts, and then some of that got knocked down because of projects going away and stuff like that.
That's correct.
What's the plan to, or is there a plan to make that up at some point?
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
So yes, good memory, when we first brought this up, we anticipated that the amount of money that we had to work with could cover 502 megawatts. We were really proud of putting our foot forward. Unfortunately, really attributable to supply chain issues during COVID, TVA came back and said, look, these projects, they're not going. Our developers have changed the price. We can't make it work. That supply chain and inflationary issue really hit these projects hard. However, that being said, we were still very keen and really pushed hard with TVA to make sure that we did not walk back any further. We were really glad that we could see that 325 stay intact.
Aaron, you mentioned the Golden Triangle coming online in January. I may have missed the other 2. Did you give a timeline on Optimist and Toloma?
I do not have that directly in front of me, but it will be, I think, Optimist. Chastity, do you remember early 2027?
2027.
I think there's always, with these projects, some risk that they may be pushed out. What we saw in Golden Triangle, for example, is that the transformer came in, it was on site, and at that point it was defective, and that was bad luck. You know, there was nothing that anyone did wrong, it was just pure bad luck, so now we're waiting on a new one. The other 2, you know, we hopefully will stay on track. TVA has been fairly open with us about where those have been in the pipeline. Tullahoma is the one that is latest, and so again, whenever you extend that spread, there's always, I think, some risk there, but they continue to push, we continue to push, and I think we're all eager to get that capacity going. All right, so let me talk about the next pillar, which is another big step forward toward our 400 megawatt goal. That's generation flexibility. We talked a little bit about this. You've heard about it in orientation and some other peripheral discussions, but this is another new opportunity that has only existed since KUB signed our long-term partnership agreement with TVA. It is a, again, new opportunity for KUB as well as other local power companies to self-supply up to 5% of their electric load. This is important, and the reason why LPCs negotiated for it for a couple reasons. The first is that it's a significant cost-saving opportunity. LPCs recognized that there were opportunities that we could pursue independently to purchase power at a price that was lower than what TVA was asking us to pay for their power on a per megawatt hour basis. Here locally, we also wanted to advance our ESG renewable goal, and again, recognizing our blueprint value of committing to a cleaner environment, we felt that this was a big step toward that goal. A couple of the details here so that you all can have good discussion about this in the community and today. our flexibility volume, when you break out that 5%, it amounts to 32.7 megawatts, which is kind of a random number, but 5% of our electric load, 32.7 megawatts. Now, what's important is that TVA recognizes that solar doesn't generate 24/7. And so they allowed a technology factor that added a multiplier effect to that 32.7 megawatts. And if we were to use all of our capacity in the solar industry, we would have 81.7 megawatts. So you can see how that number can increase, recognizing that solar is only on when the sun's shining. They also allow us to use some combination of the two. So we might fall somewhere in that spectrum.
In layman's terms, when you're looking at 5%, what does that look like compared out, you know, as far as self-producing 5% of our solar, what does that look like for KUB, and what does that look like for the customer?
The best way to describe it is that this is a formula calculation where they take all the power that KUB buys from TVA across all the hours of the year, and that on an hourly basis averages to 32 megawatts, 5%. So it truly does kind of, I think, escalate. Like on average, which is on average, averages are never quite always right, but on average, 5% of what we are buying from TVA is what's now available for us to buy elsewhere. I'm not sure that answers the question, but it's a true calculation mathematically.
It gives me a conceptual picture in my mind, because I'm one of those type of people.
1 megawatt is about 100 homes.
Yeah, that's a fair. Okay, so that's maybe a better way of describing it. So
Okay.
1 megawatt, 100 homes, 32 megawatts.
There you go.
3,200 homes. Thank you, Tiffany, for the assist.
There you go.
Another way of visualizing, when you think about solar in particular, the big solar field that we have in front of the community, or the Public Works complex on the interstate, that is 1 megawatt. So you think about 82 of those being what we could do for solar, if you want to put that visually. It is a lot of space.
So are you looking at doing other things like on roofs? And, you know, to really not take all the inventory of land.
We'll talk about that here. And this is why kind of these bottom options are important, because to your point, Ms. Wyatt, if we tried to find enough space for 82 megawatts of solar in Knoxville, I don't think we could do it cost effectively. We'd start competing for some pretty prime real estate. So the options that TVA allows us to do is we could host it locally, which we are excited to do, but they also gave us the opportunity to host those panels or that generation outside of our system, anywhere within the Tennessee Valley Authority footprint, so kind of that 7-state region that they cover. So with that out-of-system option, we're also enabled to partner with local power companies from across the valley, so it doesn't have to be just a KUB system, it could be a partnership. And then they do give us the option to partner with end-use customers for things like rooftop installations. So they gave us a wide variety of different opportunities, and those different options come with different cost ramifications.
End-use customer, excess generation purchase from customer system. So are we looking at something like, if you were to opt into this as a customer, a resident, and I'm like, okay, I've got some space, you can put it on top of my roof. Would there be a cost associated with that we'd have to invest to defray the cost that the overall KUB would not have to bear it all?
That's a really good question, and that is, I think, one of the parameters that we are still evaluating, because it's not as straightforward as some of these other opportunities. So in the big picture, we don't yet know, but that is one of those options that they allow us to pursue, and one that we'll be running the numbers on to determine where those costs can play out in a way that's favorable to our customers.
Okay.
That can come up in our small groups when we break it.
So talking a little bit about the process that we've looked at since being given this option, we obviously want to understand what the options are, and there's a probably 30-page document that TVA handed out with all the terms and conditions. So really trying to wrangle with that and understand the nuance of where our opportunities really lie. We also strategically made a decision that we wanted to prioritize the local options first, and recognizing that we felt it was important to show that local opportunity, but to do so in a way that enabled competitive pricing. So we used a competitive procurement process with a request for proposals that we're in the final stages of now. Recognizing the land limitations, we also anticipated that we were going to need to pursue some of those out-of-system options as well. And so we've been pursuing several negotiations and opportunity discussions that we can talk about. The other interesting opportunity that we evaluated, recognizing that solar can take quite a few years to come online, is that there are some opportunities for a short-term contract with other eligible sources of energy that can begin saving our customers money immediately while we wait on those longer-term solar farms to come online, because they do take some time. And then within all of this, trying to align our investments with our commitment to customer service and cost-saving opportunities.
Aaron, can you be more specific about what technology?
Yeah, let me go to the next slide. So the first one on this list is that short-term contract. And this is an opportunity to purchase biomass from an existing biomass provider outside of our footprint. And this is really a gap filler opportunity for us. This is a way to begin saving immediate dollars for KUB ratepayers while we wait on those longer-term solar investments to come online. This is not something that we see as a desirable long-term partnership. Because it is biomass, it does not get that solar technology multiplier effect. And so by pursuing what we estimate kind of at first will be 32 and then tiered down to eventually 0 as our solar comes online. But we would not want to necessarily keep that relationship long-term, because the cost savings just wouldn't be as significant as they will be when we anticipate solar. That will be effective essentially as soon as we can get the contract negotiated. And so we do hope to start seeing those savings fairly soon. The other opportunity that has been approved by our board just this month, or it's October now, so last month, is what we call conversion of a very small portion of our Green Invest commitment into a flexibility resource. And what this allows is, instead of for these 20 megawatts of Green Invest, KUB paying a premium for that energy, what it instead will enable is that KUB will really benefit on the back end financially, because we will receive, instead of paying, a significant credit from TVA to account for the generation, the actual electricity generation coming out of that solar farm in Golden Triangle, Mississippi, what we talked about. So this is our maybe a cash cow when it comes down to opportunity, because again, the prices for that solar farm were locked in 2021. And so they are very, very competitive compared to what we could gain on the open market today. Yeah.
Part of the reason this is a non-standard offering, and part of the reason that we are allowed to do this and that TVA has made the exception is because of some of the price increases and challenges that happened when we were first pursuing that original Green Invest purchase.
Yeah, excellent point, Chastity.
Why do they limit it to 20 megawatts and not 32?
It was equivalent to the dollar impact.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's equal to what the markup was on the
Right.
cost of the run.
Yeah, so it's a way of making us whole. And that was something that we worked really hard to make sure that TVA followed through on, because it is so significant financially to our customers.
But otherwise, anything you guys put in Green Invest does not count against your
Correct.
self-generation.
Correct, yeah. So in before the Green Invest conversion, those two projects would stack. You'd have Green Invest at 325 and flexibility. This Green Invest conversion is the only crossover point between the two.
Can I ask you a question? If that has been approved and starts on January 2025, which by my calendar is like 2 or 3 months away, why are you flirting with the biomass at the full level? Because it just seems like you're immediately going to have to drop that, right?
Yeah, you're seeing a little bit of real-time contract lag. So when we began negotiating the biomass, we thought that we might be able to have that contract executed in September, and we hope still to keep it on track for later this fall, but it will be as you pointed out, a pretty quick turnaround, because as soon as that solar comes online, our biomass capacity will drop to accommodate that solar.
Okay, and I have a whole series of questions about you're not very descriptive because there's a gazillion different types of biomass projects.
Yeah, and
So
we can, I'll chat maybe.
the
in our
emission profile
flexibility.
and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
is, yeah. Okay.
And in our breakout session, I'd be happy to chat a little bit
All
more
right.
about that.
We are going to break into 2 small groups, and you're going to have 30 minutes in those groups. And you're going to be talking about this in greater detail, and then there's some specific questions that KUB wants answered. Then you'll come back here and report out so everybody hears everything. So in order to get through this, to get to the small groups, I would suggest you jot your questions down, and they could be answered in your small groups.
Yep. Okay, but all good discussion. We appreciate that. So the third on this list is a partnership project. This is another off-of-system solar opportunity in partnership with another local power company where we would essentially share the panels 50-50. So we were looking at a 33 megawatt capacity. That would be about 50% of the output of this generation opportunity. We also, I mentioned the request for proposals that we have kind of entered the last stage of. That is for a local solar project, and we are still very excited to continue those negotiations and hopefully bring a local solar project to Knoxville. And then we also continue to evaluate some smaller scale solar opportunities. I mentioned kind of 1 megawatt being the community solar project we have now, something that resembles that or maybe a few of those on our local grid. But we're still evaluating what that can look like. So all told, when you look at the impacts, we will have just kind of direct line of sight now on 77 megawatts of solar with an annual savings of $4 million. And that does leave us some room still to evaluate additional opportunities under our flexibility allocation. All right, so I'm going to shift gears into the third subject, and this is another topic of a breakout session, but this is around community solar, which we've talked a little bit about. And this group heard about that before this project was launched. And for those of you who are in the room, you might remember that the big feedback point from the community advisory panel was, this thing is going to be wildly popular. Don't stress out about not selling out because you're going to sell out and you need to build the next one. You were right. So we have now hit 100% subscribed on our first community solar project. We're really excited about that and are looking for opportunities for the next one. And that's a lot of what we're going to discuss in our breakout session. So it's located at the Public Works Complex. You've seen it as you drive down I-40. This was installed prior to flexibility, so it is not part of our flexibility allocation, although the next one we anticipate would need to be. And so there's some parameters there that are going to be different. But this is a great opportunity for customers who want to support solar to do so without needing to put it on their own roof, which can be very expensive. This is a much lower buy-in price. So it's a 1 megawatt array and 2,200 panels. The benefits are that customers can participate at a scale that they choose. It can be small, it can be a lot, and they pay a portion, $5 kind of credit or a payment on their bill, and they get credited back the value of that electricity. KUB owns, maintains, and operates those panels on behalf of the customers. They don't have to worry about that. And again, they receive a credit for the value of the electricity that is produced. Just to kind of walk through a little bit of this, because it is something that we'll get into at the breakout sessions. We have the current system broken out so that at least 50% is reserved for residential subscribers. The City of Knoxville and CMC were our anchor commercial tenants to make sure that this first one could be successful, so thank you, CMC. The rest of the shares are all residential shares. You roughly have per share about 640 kilowatt hours of renewable energy annually. And so when you break that down based on our average value of the electricity produced, each share cost about $1.50 additional. With the new Inflation Response Act, the federal tax credits, we are anticipating being able to pass through the savings of that program once that tax credit is received, and that will create essentially a parity on the value of the share. So you you'll pay $5, but we will reduce the price. So you'll pay about the same amount as you're getting back in. So that's going to be a huge piece for the participants to really save a little bit more money than what the original subscription price offered. We also have an opportunity to donate the credits to Project Help, and through that opportunity, we've had about $4,000 returned back into Project Help investments, which is a great way to support our low-income neighbors. All right, I think I'm going to ask for questions on this briefly,
Clarification.
so that we can clarify any key points, and then in the breakout session, this will really be an opportunity, I think, to get into how this might look in the future. So let me pause there and ask if there's clarifying questions on community solar. Okay. So with that, I think I am done with the initial presentation, and we're looking forward to having good discussion in our breakout sessions.
Thanks, Erin. Good job. In order to maximize our time, one of the reasons we're going to small groups is so we can maximize our time. And frankly, I love small groups. I think people talk more sometimes in small groups than they do in large groups. One group will discuss the generation flexibility and the other, the community solar program. And KUB has some specific questions to which they'd like some answers. However, you are not limited to these questions during your discussion. Certainly, we want you to share any input or feedback that you may have in addition to the questions. There'll be copies of these questions in each room. Basically, under generation flexibility, there are questions as flexibility projects begin to take shape. KUB is going to have to raise community awareness, and it's a very complex topic. So they are going to want to get some specific information from you about how they might do that. Under the community solar program, they would like to know what they should consider as they evaluate the options and opportunities for an additional solar project, everything from what kind of interest you expect they're going to have to where a location might be. And you'll all have a copy of these when you get into your sessions. Erin is going to facilitate the generation of flexibility, and Chastity, the community solar. You're going to be there'll be your comments and your feedback on flip charts. And then when you get back out, after about a half an hour, you'll be back and report out to the entire group. So it'll be important when you get into your group that you select a scribe, somebody that's going to record your comments, and somebody who's going to be your spokesperson. And although we've pre-assigned the groups, this does not mean that you aren't going to be able to provide feedback on those topics. So, Generation Flexibility Group will remain in this room, and that's Christina, Janet, Stephen, Terry, and Ty. And then Tiki, Barbara, John, Claudia, and Kira are going to go with Chastity to the auditorium next door. So, go to work.
And then we'll come back. All right.
In both of these groups. And we're going to start with Generation Flex. And who is your spokesperson?
I'll do it.
Ty.
Yeah.
And Ty's going
You
to
want me
share.
to go up there?
Yes, if you don't mind.
All right. So we had three questions. The first question was, as a customer, what information would you like to know about KUB's flexibility? It kind of went into a couple of different avenues, but one was KUB's 5-point impact on the customer when you do the flex contract. So really trying to have a clarity on what impact is it going to have to the customer. It really leads into the second question as well as the concerns that we should anticipate. Some of the concerns are timing, expectations versus delivery on when timelines, if they're met or not met, and how trustworthy this system would be, or the new procedures would be. Aesthetics, if the solar arrays are in neighborhoods or near neighborhoods, especially some of that is in the neighborhood solar. Can you all hear me? But also on, okay. Also, if they have to be near load centers, it could be aesthetics. Solar for All concept, is that applicable? That's a federal government program, and then to communicate why everything is talked about as solar. There's other options, but I think there could be some questions on the type of package that is being presented. Ideas for celebrating milestones, break ground and come online. We thought that there needs to be an actionable item, not a contract to celebrate. So whether it's purchase of land or turning dirt over or completion, those were the timelines or the notable milestones to celebrate. Did I miss anything?
I noted the question that Stephen had brought up around environmental kind of qualities, especially for anything that's not solar. What
Yeah,
are
the
other-
levels of emission, the different types of generation methods and how they rank with certain emissions.
Yeah, I think you specifically said the TVA requires that it has to meet or exceed their environmental profile.
They're 50%.
But what I was asking was whether that applies to all air pollutants and other issues, or is it just a carbon
Right.
criteria? That'd be great to know.
Anybody else in the group? Any points they missed? Okay. Ty, thanks for volunteering to do that.
Thank you, Ty.
All right. Oh, solar plus storage was mentioned too. I think that would be, I don't know, I can't remember if that was in a concern or a question, but probably in the question side.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Chastity, who's your spokesperson?
I'll take it.
Ms. Kira is our spokesperson.
Ms. Gary, you want to come up here and talk? Hey, Ty, can you have a mic or something?
Birthday girl. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Now you can sing happy birthday.
Happy birthday. You were. Okay, breakout option number 2, community solar. What should KUB consider as we evaluate options and opportunity for additional community solar projects? Number 1, do you expect high interest in an additional community solar offering? Overwhelmingly, we said yes, because it's already proven its success, so we're looking forward to that. What is the outcome or product that matters most for potential customers of KUB solar or community solar? Renewable energy, electricity cost offsets, price stability. Oh, we had some very lively discussions about that. And we're going to start with what are the outcomes or the product? What do you think people would really, really be concerned about? Cost, price was the overwhelming thing for us. People were looking at how this investment is really going to be of cost savings to all of us. Now, for me, I'm looking at investments all the way around. How is this going to sustain us if we go off the grid, which was not necessarily one of the options? The environment was very, very important to our team. How does it look? How aesthetically will it look into our environment? And how is it going to impact the environment? So we want to build savings. For me, it was the grid reliability and the environment. How is this going to benefit people that are not financially able to help themselves, barely right now? How can they be subscribers to this, and how can they invest? How can we make it a win-win? So, where's John? John, if you don't mind coming to address that, we were talking specifically about Old Maryville Pike and South Knoxville and what's going on in the environment, and he can really talk to that, speak to that. You go right ahead.
But the issue there is you've got a lot of poor folks who can't afford anything. I mean, they're really, really low income. You've got a lot of land that's available there. A lot of it was Superfund sites. A lot of it's been cleaned up now, but there isn't a specific use for it. But the thought was, well, would it benefit them to have a solar installation there? And the community is overwhelmingly in favor of it because their community has been so badly injured by dirty industries, and they think of a solar energy facility as clean. So that was the business about Vestal. Did you want more than that, or?
That's pretty good, and we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Basically, what we're trying to do is merge the two together. How can people actually invest like we've got this investment over here off of 40? People immediately invested, so we don't think we're going to have a problem with people investing. The deal is, how can people that have means incorporate people who don't have the means so it can be a win-win situation? So again, I will still incorporate that, the grid. I am very, very concerned about long-term investments. And one of the conversations that we had was the battery. And we know that if you're going to have the batteries to support the grid, I'm looking at what happened in Texas. We don't want that to happen to us. If we're going to build a new infrastructure, then it should be complete with the batteries, even if it's $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 million each grid that we implement, because long-term it's going to be a good investment. And for people who actually, just like the savings that KUB has, where you can round up and you can put that money in a community pot to benefit people who do not have the means. If we were to do this as a community for solar energy, if we could offset some of the cost for people who can't afford it, instead of maybe spending $5, we spend 10, and everybody pays. That's all we're doing.
Very good. Does anybody have any comments on either one of these? Even if you weren't in that group, any questions that you had or comments that you wanted to make, input you wanted to share?
For me, on the battery situation, though, is KUB's philosophy similar to TVA's? Do you think there's a different approach to KUB than TVA does with batteries?
I think it's been pretty cost prohibitive up to this point. We've considered a battery with the community solar site, and really what's going to make that more feasible, I think, will be grant funding, because we're always trying to balance how are these investments that we're doing in sustainability impacting our overall, ratepayer base. And so it's definitely on the table, but it's been a little bit more challenging for us to kind of dive into what that would look like.
Chastity, can I ask another question about that feasibility? The EPA has all this money, this grants, and even if we were to come up with the initial plan and have them to support those battery packed up, where we couldn't afford it or what have you, would that be a viable option for us to really try to tap into those resources too, given what has happened in Texas?
I think that's a really viable option. It's something we have several teams that have been pursuing, and a grant-specific team that looks at those kinds of opportunities to help offset costs.
Okay, thank you.
We do have a rather significant grant in the
Mm-hmm.
that would allow for some battery storage on our system. It's in coordination with a lot of our big local power companies in the valley, all come together. So we're ready to hear.
Does that get to your question, Ty, about KB view on battery versus TVAs?
Yeah, it just used to be a gap in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The gap is not closing.
Yeah.
I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but from just looking at it in general, I think businesses have some ideas about how we can do it, and then there's just a large canyon between what TVA wants to do.
Yeah.
One thing you all could do, if you haven't already, is to survey your current community solar customers and see what incentivizes them. And maybe that would give you more of an idea of the broader community, what incentivizes the buy-in.
How would you access that information without privacy invasion?
I don't know. Is that possible?
I think
guess?
we could. I don't know that we would release that list publicly necessarily, but we would. We have our customers, and could, to your point, kind of in-house survey them.
Yeah, even if it was something that went out with the bill that was more an optional, go to this website kind of deal.
One of the things, and Chastity, you may recall the details on this, when we first were looking at the community solar, we had a listserv that we developed, and people opted in, because we put out there that we were doing this and got a ton of interest now. And so that now is our listserv that we use for a lot of green programs, letting them know different updates, because it was a self-identified group of both business and commercial, residential customers who were like, yes, I'm really interested, let me know more. So that's been a good resource for us to have built that kind of subset of customers.
I think the momentum that you have now going in KUB with the environmentalists and making progressive moves, I think dwelling very peacefully together. And I think this is a great opportunity to merge the two together.
Any other questions or points you want to share?
Now, looking at the interest, how many people have you had to turn down for that community solar project at this point? Has it been huge, small?
Several commercial customers were interested, but even on the residential side, we were 100% subscribed at the end of August, and I know of at least one that is on the waiting list. I suspect we probably have a few more.
So you do have a waiting list?
Mhm,
Okay.
yeah.
How is it communicated to the community? Because frankly, I never heard that I could be invested. So
Yeah,
what
me-
would happen if people knew they could invest?
That's what I was gonna ask. How do we register to?
Yeah. Yeah, we've tried to do a lot of different promotional efforts, but I think that's a really good point that, maybe it's not reaching everyone. For now, our website is the best place, kb.org/community solar, to go sign up for the wait list and learn about it. But we put it in the bill messages, we put it out at events, social media, that kind of stuff.
People don't read bills, they try to make sure they got money to pay.
So you would be surprised. Sometimes we hear some people really like having
Yeah.
that info there, but yeah, we're always
Population
trying to
do work.
expand different options to get the word out about things.
I know you guys do this as sort of, it's got a credit to their bill. Is there anything legally that limits you from having subscribers outside your service territory and then being able to reimburse them in some manner for their investment?
So,
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I know the answer.
You can be outside the electric service territory and still be within the KUB service territory.
I was thinking about both, but, yeah.
But as far as being outside of all of KUB service territory.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there's any way you can legally, give them some return on their investment.
It's an interesting question.
I don't know if that's breaking a statute, I don't.
Yeah.
But something,
Maybe like,
we could look into that, yeah. That's a good question.
and this is why I like small work groups. I think you generate a lot more ideas and comments when we have small work groups. So thank you for all your work today. In fact, I know the KUB appreciates a lot of you that you shared with them. Our next meeting is December 5th. We'll have a December meeting. Of course, we're going to say goodbye to the folks who are leaving. We have them, and some new ones will join us in January. The topic is going to be KUB's Minority, Women-Owned, and Small Business Enterprise Programs. These programs really promote a diverse pool of suppliers for KUB, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. I don't think people know much about it. You're going to be doing a little restructuring of one, correct? You're going to want some input.
Considering making some structural changes to that.
And they'll want some input from you on how that might be done. So unless you have any other questions, we're adjourned.
That'll be at 3 o'clock as well, right?
Yes, Tiffany?
In December, that'll be at 3 o'clock?
Yes.
December, okay.
No, December the 5th. It's already on the calendar. Is it already on your calendar?
It's 6 o'clock on
I haven't
the
heard.
10th.
Oh, lovely.
Okay, very good. I'll just-
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had a lot of discussion.